to, parents and even children or caregivers, what can they do to better understand or to better just help manage their children's mental health?
Yeah, so when thinking about parents, they're going to be the best people at reporting any changes about their kids because they know their kids more than anybody. And so we're thinking about like, are there any changes in the kids' mood, changes in sleep, changes in their behaviors, changes in their conduct, changes in emotions? Do the kids seem like more irritable? Do they seem more sad? Do they seem more angry? And so these are some ways of knowing if something isn't right and whether they need to intervene.
That's incredible information right there. Just things to pay attention to. Like, I would have never thought what their sleep pattern seemed like. Like, that doesn't even seem like something I would have naturally thought. But now hearing that, I think that definitely gives parents a little insight to be like, let me pay attention to that as well. Father Manny, I want to throw this over to you. Why do you think that it is particularly difficult for Latinos to talk about mental health?
There's all sorts of barriers, unfortunately, for Latinos to access mental health services. Among them is simply the lack of knowledge of where to seek treatment, often the lack of proximity of treatment centers to where Latinos live, transportation problems, the inequity in language or culture, discrimination at times, and fear because they may be undocumented and they don't know of that they can still access some services in our country. One of the big ones is the stigmas, the cultural stigmas. There's a lot of things that we do within our community that often just reinforce those stigmas. Little phrases like "la ropa sucia se lava en casa," that encourage people to keep their issues, their emotional distress to themselves. Those are just some of the things that are there. Y en español, mencionar de que desafortunadamente nuestra comunidad, los estigmas especialmente, nos impiden el accesar lo que son los recursos de salud mental. En este país, en Estados Unidos, tenemos muchos servicios disponibles, pero desafortunadamente por el miedo, por los estigmas, no vamos allí. Así que espero que esta conversación sirva para poder ayudar a nuestra comunidad.
Ay, gracias. And also, what would you say faith, the role that faith plays in people's, hesitancy to also seek help? How do you think the role of our faith plays in sometimes not getting help that we may need?
Unfortunately, people who have lots of faith can sometimes not trust the medical experts. Somehow there's a disconnect between the fact that God, in whom we believe, uses the minds and the hands of medical experts to be able to bring healing into the world. At times, we just want to leave it simply to prayer. We should definitely go there. That's a starting
Absolutely.
in asking our God. But then also knowing that God to whom we're asking help for on a particular issue that we're facing is going to give an answer through our fellow human beings, especially the experts in mental health. Desafortunadamente, la salud mental, a veces decimos, si solamente rezo, con esto se va a ir el problema. Y necesitamos las dos cosas, la oración para poder vencer los problemas de salud emocional, definitivamente conectar con la iglesia, con la vida de fe con Dios, pero pedirle a ese Dios que actúe y trayendo la sanación a nuestras vidas a través de los médicos y los profesionales de la salud mental.
I love that. And I think that that's so important to just open up that conversation also in the faith community to be like, God has given us wisdom to also seek people who have wisdom in certain areas and that can be helpful to us. So speaking of that, Beverlyn, I'm also wondering, what are some strategies that we can use just to get our kids to open up and have honest conversations? Because like Father Manny was just saying, a lot of us are taught to keep things inside and to not share. So how do we get our kids to trust us, to be open and honest and say how they're feeling?
Yes. So there are different strategies that, parents can use. I think one of the most important strategies and very basic is listening, right? But how you listen. Sometimes we listen because we want to respond as opposed to listening because we're trying to understand what's being said. And other times, parents, they don't want to see their kids struggling, so they want to jump into problem solving. And so problem solving immediately without really understanding what the kid is experiencing can feel very invalidating. So when we listen, like listening to understand what it is that they're experiencing, what it is that they're feeling, and that motivates them to then want to talk more. The second thing I think is validating the emotions. There are some emotions that, sometimes we might feel that are not good emotions, or that we shouldn't feel them. Like you shouldn't feel anxious, or you shouldn't feel worried or angry, and bring those emotions down. But like really validating them, like saying, okay, so you feel upset, or you feel anxious, or you feel worried, and really understanding why they're having those emotions. It really helps with just expressing them even more in a place that they can feel safe to feel those emotions and to be able to express them. And I think too, the other thing is like praising the kids when they are doing something that we want them to do, because sometimes we might focus on the negative things and the things that we want them to stop. But when they do something that we want them to do, being able to acknowledge that and say, oh, I'm very proud of you for doing X, Y, and Z, that creates a space where they feel safe, where they feel seen and heard, and more willing to want to then engage. Also, one thing that I wanted to mention, so the Sound It Out campaign has these cards, these conversation starter cards, and they go through a wide range of topics that parents can just sit down and have these conversations with their kids, maybe with some music in the background, and just getting to know them a little bit, just getting to know what their interests are, what it is that they like to do, what are some of the things that they're worried about. I think having those conversations and creating the space to have those conversations normalizes the experience. I'll try to summarize in Spanish very quickly.
Go for it.
Bueno, básicamente algunas estrategias para ayudar a que los niños se sientan más cómodos expresando sus emociones es de escuchar atentamente lo que ellos nos están diciendo. A veces tratamos de resolver los problemas sin realmente comprenderlos, así que escuchándolos atentamente ayuda a que ellos continúen expresándose. Lo otro es identificando las emociones que ellos sienten y validando las emociones, no tratar de opacar la emoción, sino de poder crear un espacio donde puedan sentirse libres de expresar ansiedad o de expresar enojo de una forma segura. Otra cosa es poder elogiarlos cuando están haciendo cosas buenas, porque eso los motiva a continuar haciendo esas cosas, pero también crea un ambiente donde se sienten seguros con sus padres. Y lo último que quería mencionar son unas tarjetitas que Sound It Out, la campaña de Sound It Out, ha creado, y la pueden encontrar en su página web, donde son preguntas que los padres pueden preguntarle a sus hijos y también responder esas preguntas para que los hijos los conozcan un poquito más a ustedes, y crea un ambiente donde puedan comenzar a conocerse, puedan comenzar a crear esta amistad y crear una relación que se sienta segura.
And they're super fun, by the way. Those cards are super fun. We were playing around with it.
They're great conversation starters. Like, just to get the convo started, it almost feels like you're about to play a game with them, but at the same time, it allows them to open up and share with you. And I feel like your kids are changing in every stage of their life. They're ever evolving. So getting to know your kid, getting to know them all over again with these cards is fun and something that you can use often in different stages in their life. I just want to say hi to everybody who might be just joining us, though. We are here with the Sound It Out campaign, Mental Health Pro Beverlyn and Father Manny. If you're just joining us right now, we're having an incredible conversation about mental health and the well-being of our children. And I specifically wanted to talk about parents who are tuning in who may have middle schoolers, specifically children in middle school. What are some of the emotional challenges that they might be facing, and how could those emotional challenges just manifest in like their daily lives? Like, what are some of the issues that we're seeing, specifically also for our Latino community? Beverlyn, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll go to Father Manny.
Yes, so a lot of the concerns that I'm seeing with middle schoolers, and also maybe a little bit of high schoolers, we see lots of depression. We see a lot of anxiety, problems in school, like conduct problems. Some kids have problems with substance use. And what we're also seeing is an increase in like suicidal thoughts and suicidal behaviors and hospitalizations because of these things. Now, one of the ways that parents can start to notice that there are problems is when there are problems happening in school. So school tends to be a place where kids begin to like act out, and then teachers might be calling the parents and explaining some of these behaviors. Another thing is when parents start to notice like irritability. So depression in kids shows up as irritability, sometimes as sadness, but oftentimes like irritability is what they tend to see. They're very grumpy, they might be a little bit oppositional, but it's because internally they're feeling depressed and they're having thoughts that they might not be communicating to the parents. So these are some of the ways, and also it tends to be reflected in their academic performance. So when kids are very anxious, or when they're very depressed, or when they're very preoccupied, their grades start to decline. And then it becomes a stressor because then the parents become worried about their academic performance, but underlying that is often like a mental health problem.
Wow. Father Manny, are there any thoughts you may have for middle schoolers specifically? I actually was shocked because I think so many of us even think middle school still seems so young. Like, how is this possible to be happening for middle school? Even when you say substance abuse, I don't even think that parents might even realize that at such a young age that these things can be very real in our community and for our children. So, Father Manny, I'm so curious, what would you say to parents just trying to support their children through some of these situations?
Yeah, so one of the things that what Beverly Rosario just said, I experience it here sometimes after church on Sunday. Parents will come in and say, "Father, I noticed that my son isn't sleeping well," and so it's connected back to what you said at the beginning about your surprise about sleep. No puede dormir bien, and no puede dormir, well, dormir bien, basically translates to my child is going through anxiety. And so they're like, can you just pray over him or over her so that they can sleep well again? Well, of course I can, but that gives me an opportunity to open the conversation about anxiety and what's going on in your child's life that might be causing him or her so much anxiety. Being Latinos, I don't think we can underestimate also in this, at least here in Chicago, is this very big multicultural city. And Latinos start experiencing at times acts of discrimination or bullying in a way that other kids may not. It happens with Latino kids, with Black kids, minority kids, and they don't know how to tell you that, especially when they're going through those years of development, because you want to be proud of who you are, and yet you don't quite belong. For our families, I see that very, very often, that as children, they're trying to fit in, and at times where you're like, recuerda que eres mexicano, right? At home, right? And then they arrive at school and they're like, no, you don't belong. You're not American. And so that creates this incredible tension of who the heck am I? And who do I go? And the tension in between. I think we've all lived through that.
For sure.
And so what I try to do with parents is simply allow them or give them tools. This starter packet is going to be a great tool, by the way, but give them tools to be able to say, you can have an open conversation. That is the best thing from my experience, to open a conversation that is safe for your child to trust you. Que no lo vas a regañar, that they're not going to be like, ¿qué te pasa? They're going to take out la chanclas y no estás bien.
I know, exactly.
Sometimes they correlate, seriously. And as parents, you'll know this. You correlate bad grades with like, ¿Para qué trabajo tanto? ¿Para qué crucé la frontera? ¿Para que tú no saques buenos grados? And so then you just reinforcing a negative feeling in the child instead of helping him or her. And so I think being aware of those things is a great, great way to start.
I want to quickly add, sorry, Adrienne, that sometimes, with what Father Manny is saying, like having an open conversation is the best thing. Sometimes parents are very concerned that if they have this conversation, they're going to make things worse, or that they're going to harm their child, that the symptoms will get worse and then they won't know what to do. When in reality, it's the opposite, right? By having an open conversation, then the kids can feel like, oh, I can talk to my mom about this, or I can tell my dad about these things. Like they're not going to be upset. They're not going to, get mad at me and then make things worse. And then one other thing I wanted to quickly mention is that with Latino kids and families, oftentimes mental health problems show up physically. So you might have like lots of headaches or like lots of stomach pain or like vomiting and some of these more physiological symptoms. And so that often tends to be like an indication that maybe there isn't something like medically wrong and that the source might be more emotional and psychological.
That is a great tip because again, I wouldn't even know that. I'm learning here as well because I think that so many of us might think, oh, my child is having stomach issues, but that actually might come from anxiety, which now that you're saying it makes so much sense. I'm so curious because you just said right now, even with Father Manning mentioning the chancla, like I'm like, how does children's home environment affect them? Like home environment, what about some of the friendships that they might have at school? Like how can parents help in that sense?
I can start there. So definitely home environment is going to be a big piece because what happens in the home, children start to learn from a very young age what is appropriate and what might not be, what can they say, what can they not, whether they feel safe or not. If kids don't feel safe at home, they're going to try to find safety in school with peers and then vice versa. I think that the biggest piece here is being able to form a relationship with the child where they can feel safe to come to the parents and tell them anything that's like upsetting them, that's bothering them. Sometimes too, parents can model for their kids how they would like their kids to express themselves, their emotions, their thoughts. Because what ends up happening is, you're a parent, nobody taught you how to do these things, and then you don't. And then you might do things that your parents did with you or your grandparents did. And that's kind of like what we're modeling to the kids. And so then they internalize that and they're like, oh, I can't express my feelings. I can't say these things. Something bad might happen. So a big piece really is for parents to be able to model how they would want their kids to react, to act. Like if parents want kids to be more open about their emotions, then parents need to be open themselves about their emotions.
That's so good. That is such like that seems so like basic. Like okay, like model. Also, I think we hear so much. Don't do as I say, do as I do. And people are like, oh no, like we actually have to be a great example for our children. But I don't think we ever think about that on an emotional level, that like even what their relationship looks like with their parents, are they open and honest with them? Do they express with their kids? I'm so curious. Father Manny, would you say parents also telling their kids and sharing their emotions with their kids is a good thing or a bad thing? Like if they're going through something or they're experiencing, some anxiety, like, is that okay for them to share that with their kids?
Yeah, so I think we just got to be careful as to how, right? And kids are not ready for the big things that we adults have to deal
Yeah.
with. So a little bit of prudence goes a long way.
So
But I think
smart.
finding the ways, and especially for us Latinos, it's so hard to just talk about our emotions or find a way because we have never been taught this as to how to do it appropriately. For us as people of faith, I find that especially praying together as a
Oh,
family, when you act like simply, it would be after, instead, like at the end of the day or when you're about to begin the day, before your kids go to school, or especially like when you're able to come together at the end of the day and give thanks to God for the day and just open it up and say, is there anything you want to pray for to your child? Gives them an opportunity to bring out in a very good way and safe way the possibility to express whatever's happening there. They might be worried about a pet, or they might be worried about a friend of theirs at school. But you open up a space that is really healthy from a faith perspective and a mental health perspective, for them to express what's going on inside of them.
and you can start that from a super young age, from the moment they can speak, and you can start saying, my sister did this with my nieces from the time they were like 3 or 4 years old. Before they would go to bed, what do you want to pray for? What are you thinking about? Who do you want to pray for tonight? And they would say things that they were worried about. If there was a pet they were worried about, I want to pray for this person, or I want to pray for this person. They were hungry, or I saw someone in the street today that I was concerned about. The tiniest things that you don't even realize that children pay attention to, or that concerns their little hearts and their minds. Prayer, I think, is such an important thing. Obviously, It's been, for me, one of the greatest sources of strength. Just feeling like if I didn't feel I had someone I could talk to, that I could go to God with my problems. And I think that that's been so helpful for me, but that can be so helpful for little children, and starting that in them from a super young age. But also when you do it with your parents, it allows them to also know what's going on and what are the things that are weighing heavy on your mind and on your heart. That is so great. Beverly, what did you want to add to that as well?
I wanted to add closing the loop, right? So sometimes it's good to express your emotion as a parent, and
Yeah.
also show like how you may have solved that problem.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like, I was worried about this thing, and normalizing that it's okay to feel worried, and this is what I did to
Yes.
solve this problem. And so it kind of normalizes for the child that, yes, I can solve problems, and I can also sit with my emotions. Like, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to go in one extreme or the other. And that using prayer in situations where things are very uncertain or you might have no control over, you can really do trust God to intervene in those situations. So like, it all can coexist.
Absolutely. Just helping to give parents and caregivers just different, how they can share with their children ways that they manage their stress and emotions, and also teach them a positive example on how the children can handle their stress and emotions as well. Father Manny, what are, along with prayer, are there any other spiritual practices that we can incorporate into self-care routines?
Yeah, so definitely for me as a Catholic priest, and for Catholics who are watching, we have the sacrament called the sacrament of confession, right? Which if you do this, you're literally coming into a place where you're trusting whatever's in your heart to God and to a priest. I've seen studies, and I would love to see more about the correlation of mental health and going to confession. I've seen a couple things, and it's really interesting stuff. Also, I think being able to, if you're dealing with any issue, being able to reach out to your pastor, regardless of what Christian tradition you're in or denomination you're in. At times, we're able to serve as mediators to overcome those barriers, precisely the stigmas that are often in the community. At times, it's very common to think that mental health, if you have an issue, all of a sudden that you're crazy, that you're out of your mind. Estás loco. Entonces, yo no estoy loco, padre. No, 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 no.
This is so important to hit on, because this is so true, especially in la comunidad Latino. We'll be like, I've even heard people be like, ella tiene un demonio. That's like, that's what's, she's being attacked by a demon, is why she's having mental, issues. And that's just not true. It really can be medical, just like anything else as well, or just not taking the time to have an outlet for their mental well-being. So I think that's so important that you just mentioned that. But continue, I'm sorry.
No, no, no. I think you're right on. And when people think that it's a demon that's causing this,
Yeah.
then when you are able to have mediator like a pastor to say, well, no, hold on a second, because often by blaming the demon, what we're doing, at least culturally, is to be able to hide the guilt that we feel. There's this erroneous idea that we are guilty for whatever my son or my daughter is going through. Somehow I caused this. And so, what do? Blame the demon, for doing this. And I think by putting it in a context of faith, we're able to then say, no, 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 you didn't do this, you didn't cause this, right? So there's ways that you can get help. And yes, let's use prayer as one of them, but let's connect you. And often, I've had a lot of experiences here at the church where I'm at, in which by saying, let me connect you to a mental health expert, then people are more open to it because it comes from a source of authority that they perceive as authority, to be able to go and seek the help.
Yeah, if my father said that this is something I should do, then maybe I should be open to it. I totally get that, and that they actually might seek out the help that they need.
Yep. And I would encourage also, if there's any pastor, watching this, to reach out, find out what are the mental health resources in your community to be able to refer people. It is incredible the power of healing that occurs simply with that referral coming from, the church to the mental health expert, and you taking your parishioners, the people that you serve, to connect them. It is a lot. People, Latinos, feel safe, about, that connection. And I've seen that happen. So just an encouragement.
No, that's incredible. Like even me saying that out loud right now and being like, oh, people have said, and even using the term demon, like it's so crazy how uncomfortable these conversations can be for us. But I'm so glad that we're just being raw, honest, and real, because that's really the only way that we're going to grow and learn from one another. And I just think that that's so helpful, such helpful information for someone to say, man, I can get mental help. And at the same time, even if I hear it from my father or my pastor, that kind of tells me it's okay for me to do this. It's okay for me to get this help for my child as well. So guys, that is absolutely amazing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now I actually know that we have some parents on the line with some questions for us. We actually have Angelica from Texas, who I would love to know if you have any questions for our panel. Angelica, are you there? Hello.
Hey, thank you for having this conversation. It's an amazing conversation, amazing topic that I've been just passionate about. I do have a question. So, my question is, early detection and diagnosis possibly lead to a healthier mental health adulthood and understanding of emotional health for the family and a better communication with peers and teachers. For those working in the education sector, how can they get involved or how can they help? What are the best practices and resources for them? And how do they point families in the right direction if they have to? So I'm talking about teachers or maybe counselors in terms of like that.
We can open it up to Beverlyn or Father Manny. Go for it.
I can jump in really quickly. So there are lots of different resources out there. I think that for educators specifically, becoming aware of like local and statewide resources that might be available is one place to start. Partnering with healthcare professionals, so we're thinking about psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers. Oftentimes schools have guidance counselors who might be connected to like mental health professionals. And so partnering with them can often create these referral sources. Sometimes like also doing like continuing education credits and staying involved and learning more about mental health can provide you with some resources to help kids in the moment. But I would say too, for connecting parents, oftentimes the pediatrician can be a point person that can then connect them to more mental health services. So often parents do take their kids to the doctor. And so the pediatricians, by working in the health section, can create referrals that then the parents can follow up and get those services to their kids. And very quickly, there are some like resources like the American Academy of Pediatrics. I know that Sesame Street has some really nice resources and tools for younger kids that can be very, very useful. And then for some work with trauma, there's like the Child Traumatic Stress Network. Those websites have tons and tons of wonderful resources that teachers can use in the classroom with kids or point the parents to them.
Also, I just want to add one more thing. At times with the community that I have worked with, there's a concern about legal status in which parents may have come here undocumented and they fear deportation. And that prevents them from seeking help for their kids. Even though there are millions of children in this country of undocumented immigrants are eligible for health insurance under the Affordable Care Act. And so people need to know that is a resource. There's so many people that don't know that. And it's really important for them to know that they can access these services through the Affordable Care Act, and their kids can have insurance that allows them access into all these services.
That is incredible information. Like just knowing that I think a lot of the time the access is a huge issue, is them not feeling like they have access or not knowing or having the information, which is why it's so important to have these conversations that we're having right now, that if anybody is watching this right now, they can share that information with somebody else and say, hey, did you know this? Did you know that this is available to us as a resource? So I think that's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Angelica. We're going to move on to our next question, which is from Brenda Hernandez from California. Brenda, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, Brenda.
Thank you so much. So my question is, now understanding the stigma mental health presents in the Latino community, and as a new parent, based on your upbringing and experiences, how would you approach catering to the mental health challenges of your son with what you know now?
I feel like I'm even learning so much just having this conversation. That's why I'm grateful for this, because my son is only a year old and I want to be the best mom I can possibly be. And at the same time, recognizing that my son is being raised in a completely different generation than I am in. And I think one of the main things that honestly concerns me is just how different social media is now and how that's affecting our children. And that's something that I'm paying really close attention to with my sister's children that are a bit older. They are 8 and 11. And just seeing how any of that affects them, because my son will be raised in just a completely different generation with something that I didn't grow up with. I didn't know, we didn't have the internet. So I know that that's something that I'm definitely going to pay closer attention to. And I'm going to continue to try to learn from some of the parents that I'm good friends with that are raising kids that are a bit older than me, but also just right now hearing that Sesame Street has resources. My son loves Plaza Sésamo, and that he's learning from that, but like paying attention to that. But I think the main thing when you talk about the stigma in mental health is wanting to be really open and honest with my son. And more than anything, that if he tells me something that might be shocking to me or hurtful to me, that I not be as reactive as I may want to be. Does that make sense? Like, I think that if we're telling our children, you can tell me anything and you can trust me, that I actually have to honor that. Does that make sense? And I think that's a really difficult thing to do. And I recognize that. But I think that as Latinos, we can be a little dramatic at times, and that we can say, he's like, sometimes we can be dramatic a lot of the time. We
invented telenovelas.
Tú me puedes decir lo que quiera, yo estoy aquí para usted, like I'm here for you, I love you, yo te quiero, tú me puedes decir cualquier cosa, and I'm gonna, and then they tell us and we're like, pero qué? You did what? You tried what drug with what friends? You did what? You were kissing a boy where? And we can't help but react in these emotional ways. I think if we're being honest, that's even controlling our emotions and learning how to not be so reactive in a way that makes our kids feel like they've disappointed us, that they can't come and tell us something, that we are going to be so angry that it changes the unconditional love that we're supposed to have for them. So I think that one of my favorite Bible verses, I actually don't know exactly which one it is. Father Manny, you might be able to help me with this, but that nothing can separate us from the love of Jesus, that I also remind them that there's nothing that can separate them from my love either. And I want to be a real example of that for my son, that there isn't anything that he would do or say that would change how I love him, and that I want to be an example of God's love for him here on this earth. So I think for me, I have to keep that in the back of my head, that like, if he ever tells me something crazy, that I want to be a good example of controlling my emotions when he's telling me that, so that I can be a real source of love and a confidant for him.
I love that. Thank you.
Of course. Did you have any other questions?
I did have one more question. Clearly, this is something I'm passionate about. How do you balance having a faith-based approach to mental health, like trusting God, but also seeking help?
Like I said earlier, and obviously the both of you can jump into this one as well, but I think that for me, prayer has been such a source of strength for me, but at the same time, I know that God has given us wisdom, and he's given other people who have studied and gone to school for this. Like there has to, like, literally, if God is saying that wisdom is so important, there's wisdom in going and seeking actual medical help. I think that the fact that we view mental health so differently from the rest of our bodies, like our brain is an organ, just like our liver is, and just like our heart is. If you had a heart condition, I would 100% tell you to go see a cardiologist. Yet, if you had a mental condition, why wouldn't you go see a therapist or psychologist or a psychiatrist? You know what I mean? Like, I think in our community, there's been such a separation in that. But for me, there's wisdom in seeking help. There's wisdom in going and talking to somebody or somebody who studied something and that's their field that they specialize in, I think you absolutely should get help in that way. So for me, I think it's a yes, and it's doing both things. It's, you can absolutely pray about a situation and also seek help at the same time. Father Manny, I'd love to hear your opinion on this.
You know, I had an insight a couple of years ago. We all remember that story, I think, from the Gospel of Mark, in which Jesus himself is asked, "What is the most important thing in the entire law?" And Jesus responds saying, "To love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. And the second, to love your neighbor as yourself, that there's no greater commandment than those."
Mm-hmm.
Now, often we just hear that line in church like, yeah, he said that. But he said, with all your mind. We can't fully love God, really, or our neighbor if our mind isn't whole. What that word refers to is, the Greek word used in scripture is wholeness, that it gets translated into English as all or fullness. And so with your whole mind, your mind needs to be healthy. With your whole heart, your heart needs to be healthy in order to love God and neighbor. And we're all trying to do that in different ways. And so how do I get to love God with my whole mind when I recognize that my mind is not whole, that my mind is broken or needs help?
Yeah.
What do I do? In order to achieve that goal of loving God with my whole mind, I seek help with those who can help me. And those are the healers who are mental health professionals. And to be able to connect both, they're not against each other. We have to work together in order to do what God wants us to do.
I love that. Beverlyn, is there anything you want to add to this as well?
Yes, I wanted to quickly add, to think about what are the implications of the thoughts that we're having. If we think that these two things are separate, like your mental health is one thing and your spiritual health is one thing, and that God can only intervene in one specific way, what does that mean? It means that we're putting God in this box and we're saying God can only heal me supernaturally. And there's no other way, there's no other method, there's no other means that he can use to heal me. And that's not the case, right? Like if we think about God being all knowing and all powerful and all loving, he will use all means necessary, right, to address the needs and the prayers and concerns that we have. And so to make this dichotomy and say that it can only be this way, or that mental health problems are only spiritual problems, then we're limiting God's ability and we're not realizing that that's what we're doing.
I absolutely love that. That's incredible. I just want to say thank you for these questions. Those were amazing questions, Brenda. Thank you. Did this help you? I don't know if she's still there.
It did. Yes, it did. Sorry, yes, it did. Thank you so much, all of you, for taking the time to answer those.
Thank you. Well, guys, before we close, I just again want to say thank you so much to our panelists. Beverly, you've been incredible. Father Manny, absolutely amazing. I feel like I've learned so much. I'm sure that so many people tuning in have learned so much. But I'm wondering if there's anything you feel like we've left out on, or any last final words of advice that you want to give to the parents and the caregivers on how best to support their child's emotional well-being. Beverly, I'm going to start with you.
Yes. I mean, I would say, just the fact that parents are here, that they're tuning in, that they're watching, it just shows how concerned they are about their kids, how much they want to learn and just be able to support their children. When it comes to seeking mental health services, there's often a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. I would encourage parents to have self-compassion, right? There isn't a manual, there isn't something that tells you exactly what you need to do and how you need to do it. And so we're all learning in this journey that we call life, and to have some self-compassion and to just go to this journey with an open mind and an open heart, and recognizing that this journey of healing, healing yourself and also bringing healing to your kid, is not going to look the same for you as it would for someone else. So just to keep some of those things in mind.
I love that. Father Manny?
I would concur. I would start with, I guess, two aspects. One is for the parents. you don't have to have it all together. None of us have it all together, to be honest. And it's okay to seek help. It's okay to speak about, and I would say even about the concerns, maybe with other adults, it begins with you first, speaking with other adults about your own concerns about seeking mental health in order to overcome the stigmas that are affecting you and the fears that are natural, to being a parent. It's okay to be able to do that. The second thing, I think we've talked about it already, but if I can just reinforce it, keeping open communication with your children, and letting them know that they're loved. And it's the little things. And I gotta say, especially for Latinos, especially those who are recent Latinos that have immigrated, or probably our parents did this to us, they justified loving us. Mijo, tú sabes que te quiero porque trabajo tanto por ti. I'm working so many hours, and this is the way that I show you that I love you. A child needs to know through your lips, through your words. Those, I keep telling the parents here in my church, only your son and your daughter are expecting to hear those words of love from you, mom and dad, and you're the only ones that they will hear it from in such a unique way. No one else in the world can hear I love you in the same way that mom can tell me that loves me, or that dad can tell me that I love you. And so if you're just saying, well, because I expect my child to understand that because I'm working so much for them, that they're going to somehow know that they're loved, that doesn't happen. So many young people have come to me seeking, often when it's quinceañera time, I'll just end with that, in which, they're looking, they make a ton of mistakes, through life, because all they wanted to hear from their dad, was, I love you, mija, eres hermosa. And because they never heard it from dad, they go out looking for, les digo, el primer tonto que les llega y les dice, qué bonita estás. And then they go. Because parents can do that for their kids. You guys have amazing power in this healing and healing path for your children. So no se queden las palabras solitas, no se coman esa oportunidad de tener un impacto tan hermoso en la vida de sus hijos. Díganle cuánto los aman. No nada más asuman de que los niños van a entender porque usted está trabajando tantas horas por él o por ella, o después para cubrir su propio sentido de culpabilidad que no está en la vida de ellos, les compra todos los gadgets necesarios para decir, te compré todo esto, mijo, eso dice que te quiero. No, el niño necesita saber, mijo, te quiero, estoy orgulloso de ti. Mija, eres hermosa. If parents can do that, I think it's a fantastic starting point towards this healing journey.
Wow, this has been so impactful, even for me. I am so grateful. Thank you, both Beverly and Father Manny, for your expertise and just your insights. I'm sure that a lot of parents are going to start just utilizing even the simplest things that you guys just said right now, telling your children you love them, letting them know and hear that from you is so important. And just the tools and the resources that you guys have shared with us today, so important, so needed, and so necessary. I know that I'm going to use them for sure. So again, thank you both. Thank you so much. I'm like, bye guys.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wow. Okay, guys, this was a fantastic event. This has been absolutely amazing. I definitely feel like I learned so much. I hope that you guys took something away from this that will definitely change how you're going to parent your kids and just keep you aware for so many things that were shared with us today. We definitely can't forget to thank the Ad Council, Pivotal Ventures, and the Huntsman Mental Health Institute just for sponsoring this event today as a part of their Sound It Out campaign. They're doing absolutely incredible work just to support parents, caregivers, and the children in our community. So again, a huge thank you to them. Now, before we wrap up, I just want to make sure that you guys have got all the resources to take away from today. There's going to actually be a link right here that's going to pop up on the screen. I definitely want you guys to either screenshot that or write it down. It is sounditouttogether.org. And there's also a Spanish site, which is sounditouttogether.org/ES, just to learn more about the Sound It Out campaign, which is focusing on helping parents and caregivers support their kids' emotional well-being through the power of music and conversation. So if you need help, just starting the conversation with your kids, I would definitely recommend checking out the amazing conversation starter pack with a new interactive digital tool that's super easy to use. You can actually check that out at sounditouttogether.org/talk. And guys, these resources are like the secret sauce to just helping you support your kids' emotional well-being. And of course, we need to share this information because it's super important that you have this. If there's someone that you know that absolutely needs help, call the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988. It is for 24/7 free and confidential support. And that's just really important that we also provide you guys with that as well. Also, we want to hear from you just to see if this event was helpful at all, so we can actually continue to help provide you with more educational events like this in the future. So all you've got to do is actually go to this information right here. You can actually just get this check out the QR code that's on our screen right now. You can literally lift up your telephones and it'll take you directly to an amazing survey that allows us to get feedback from you guys. So all you've got to do is scan the QR code that's on the screen when this event ends, just to complete the survey. And it'll only take just a couple of minutes. That'll hopefully help us to continue to provide you guys with these kind of events and make them even better for you. Again, I hope that you're leaving this inspired, empowered, and maybe just a little bit more enlightened about just how you can support your kids' emotional well-being and your kids' mental health. I know that parenting can be super tough, but we can do this together. They say it takes a village. I want to be a part of your village. I think we all want to be a part of your village. Our community wants to be a part of that village that can really help make a difference for our children and just this next generation. So as we draw to the end of this inspiring conversation, I want to emphasize just the power of the arts in our journey towards understanding and addressing mental health, whether it's music in particular or just other arts. I definitely think for me, music has had a huge impact, and it's just a universal language, a rhythm that resonates with our hearts, and it really helps us process, express, and sometimes even heal our deepest emotions. So I'm really grateful that the Sound It Out campaign just encapsulates this belief, using music to bridge and connect these conversations. So to close out this afternoon, I really, really wanted to share a special musical moment with you that holds a special part in my heart for me. So I'm actually joined by my father, my husband, my sister, and my entire family, and my New Breed family for this performance. That's more than just a song. For me, it's definitely a testament to the collective spirit of resilience, understanding, and hope. It's a reflection of our shared experiences and also just the importance of voicing our feelings. So I pray that this melody inspires you as we all just continue to use the arts, our voices, and our stories to navigate our emotions. And let's continue to support one another as we create a brighter future for our children and this next generation. I love you guys, and thank you, thank you, thank you. I hope you enjoy this. Besitos.
No hay Dios grande como tú. No lo hay, no lo hay. No hay Dios tan grande como tú. No lo hay, no lo hay, no lo hay. No hay Dios tan grande como tú. No lo hay, no lo hay. No hay Dios tan grande como tú. No lo hay, no lo hay, no lo hay. No hay Dios que pueda hacer las obras como las que haces tú. No hay Dios que pueda hacer las obras como las que haces tú. No con espada ni con ejército, mas con su Santo Espíritu. No es con espadas ni con ejército, mas con su Santo Espíritu. Y esos montes se moverán. Y esos montes se moverán. Y esos montes se moverán, mas con su Santo Espíritu. No hay Dios, break it. No hay Dios tan grande como tú. No lo hay, no lo hay. No hay Dios tan grande como tú. No lo hay, no lo hay.
Mija. Talk to me.
It's nothing.
Please.
Mom, I'm fine. I'm fine. I have to go.
Isa.